At the last minute, I discovered that I wasn't going to go back to graduate school after law school. Research money had dried up. The Vietnam War had started to get more serious, and there was chaos throughout the Western world. I probably wouldn't have stayed in law school if it weren't for other activities in social movements. I was active in working with the Black Panthers, the um, various civil rights groups. I marched with King, and I was particularly active in the war information movement. The They were branded as anti-Vietnam War protesters. Most of them weren't really so much anti-Vietnam War as they were the way the government was conducting the situation, sort of heavy-handedly and not giving much room for debate. I belonged to a few teaching groups. I worked with some of the people, with Hans Morgenthau and his Committee of 1,000. Um, One of the fun things I did was work with some of the Black Panthers with black capitalism, where they started up bars and taverns on the south side of Chicago. And there were lots of fun things to do back then, which took away from some of the boredom of the law school. Um, I edited the law school newspaper and took the first editorial position of any law school newspaper uh, against the Vietnam War. Got a lot of heat over that, and also got a lot of good publicity and praise. I got to meet a lot of the people on the Chicago Sun-Times staff, politically active reporters and people such as that. Um, so essentially, I was sort of having fun, and I didn't really want to practice law. I wanted to do more research, particularly in the areas of social structure and criminology, large-scale organization, things such as that. So when I got a cancellation of a grant at Wisconsin, I was told to move back to Colorado and play around for a year. Well, I moved back to Colorado, started looking for a job, and finally got a job in a real live law firm. It was a tax firm, and I had a few taxation courses in law school. And it wasn't what I wanted, but it would do until something else came through. Um, so I had taken the bar exam and started working in this law office for this tax accountant, and was just overwhelmed and bored shitless. I'd always been told that lawyers don't fill out tax returns, CPAs do that. And my first day, I was greeted with a stack of 30 tax returns, individual tax returns that I was supposed to prepare. Well, I'd never even done my own taxes uh, prior to that, so I had no idea what was going on. I had to take a quick refresher course, and even then, never felt truly comfortable with it. So I struggled along for a few months, took the bar exam, struggled along further, and applied for every grant I could find and every school program I could find in order to get back to school and avoid working. To amuse myself, I got real active in the anti-war movement in Colorado and was quite energetic, I guess, in some of the activities that I engaged in. Uh, some of it was studying the atomic bomb plant at Rocky Flats. Others was uh, Others were researching the lubrication of the fault line at the nerve gas factory at Rocky Mountain Arsenal, and various fun things that kind of piqued my interest. However, I just couldn't wait to get away. Then one day, this young man came into my office. He had been referred to me by the son of a barber I had worked for in Walsenburg, Colorado. Nice Italian guy. And he had been a artist, I guess you would call him, graduate school in art. Or his friend was, excuse me. He came in with flowing, long red hair down to the middle of his back, big smile on his face, a well-trimmed beard, and sat down and started talking to me. I almost had to call for an interpreter because what he was telling me was not understandable for people my age or experience. So he came in the office and he says, "I need representation." I said, "What for?" And he said, "I just been busted." I said, "What do you mean you've been busted?" He said, "Well, I was arrested by the police." "Oh, really? And what for?" "Smoking dope." "What?" "Smoking marijuana, possessing marijuana." "Okay, tell me about it." Well, apparently he had been playing in a band in the Exodus Club in Denver, which was a 3-2 18-year-old bar serving 3-2 beer. And after the performance, he went back to where he was staying at this apartment. And about 20 minutes later, the police kicked in the door and arrested everybody inside and charged everybody with possession of marijuana. Well, just previously, the son of a high school principal in Denver had been accused of possessing and smoking marijuana, and the humiliation was so bad that the high school principal, father of this guy, purportedly committed suicide because of it. So there was a lot of social opprobrium about drugs, and particularly marijuana, and it was associated with beatniks and hippies and unpatriotic behavior, long hair, and all kinds of things like this. So he asked if I would represent him. I said, "Sure, I'll represent you." He says, "Well, my grandfather's office will be contacting you regarding fees." I said, "Fine." Gave him the contact information. The next day I get a call from Western Union that there was a funds transfer available there for me. I went over to collect it and signed for it, went back to the office, and a call came in from a senator's office in Washington. And I got my secretary, put him through. And I'm talking to this guy, he's a senior senator from a southern state. And so he says to me, he says, "Who the hell do you think you are to represent my grandson?" No, I was somewhat offended. Being an egotist that I am, or the egotist that I am, I was really offended that he would question my credentials and everything else. So after a few comments back and forth, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. I'm the only goddamn lawyer in this town that's going to take your grandson's case." And then hung up on him. Well, right before we parted company the day before, the grandson asked me, "Are you going to make me cut my hair?" I said, "Hell, I don't care. I'm not the one going to jail." And he looks at me and he says, "Far out, man." Walked out. Well, I sent the funds transfer back to the state. And the next day I get another call. And it's the senator's aide. And he said, just because you found out who your client's grandfather was doesn't mean you can hold us up. He had sent another retainer check at double the initial amount, and I'd send that back to him. So he thought I was holding him up for more money, which I wasn't. I was just pissed off that I was insulted. So I told him that no amount of money was going to get me back on the case. And I thought that was the end of it until the client came in and crying and everything, and he was essentially begging me to take the case. And I said, okay, as long as I don't have to have anything to do with your grandfather, I'll take your case. But the money thing is between you and I, and you get money from your grandfather. I don't want to have to deal with him. So that's the way the case progressed. Well, after a while, he offered to help me do the case, and I told him to stay out. A little while later, we came to a hearing, and he had mentioned to the press in his home state he might come out and help me try the case against his grandfather, because obviously they were prejudiced against Southerners up in that northern Colorado area. I quelched that idea rapidly, and we go to a hearing. It was a suppression of evidence hearing. And the testimony at the suppression was these cops, after listening to the loud band at the nightclub, decided to follow us members home. And they followed him to this one apartment house and decided to check out the apartment, and walked around it a couple times, and then walked down the alley. And as they were walking down the alley, which was fairly narrow, they smelled marijuana smoke coming from the building. And after examination, there was a light on the third floor, and they figured that's where the smoke smell was coming from. So they decided to climb up the fire escape, and they climb up to the third floor, and there's a window on the fire escape, and they look in the window, and here's some people playing around with an oven, and smoke was emanating from the oven, and they were able to determine that that was the marijuana smoke. These guys had pretty good smell, pretty good sense of direction. So I'm cross-examining. I asked them which way smoke generally traveled, and they said up, and they told me that the apartment was on the third floor, and they couldn't quite figure out how the smoke went down from the third floor, but they insisted that it did. And on further cross-examination, they had a few errors in their story that I pointed out to the judge. Finally, it was time for arguments. And the prosecutor argued a little bit, my co-counsel argued a little bit, and I looked at the judge and I said, you know, Judge, I don't mind the officers think I'm so stupid as to believe this story, but if I were you, I'd be highly insulted. Smoke goes uphill, it doesn't go downhill. The story itself is a complete fabrication, and I don't think they had probable cause to search or make arrest or do anything. Well, the judge kind of agreed with me, and he dismissed the case. Well, the next thing I know, I'm the senator's favorite lawyer, and he started sending cases to me and referring people to me and things like that. And that's how I sort of got started out. And the first referral from the Southern senator was a civil rights case, which I will discuss in the next program. Please like me on your forum and recommend me to others, and help me build my audience. Thank you very much.